Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Collecting Issues, the monthly comic book club, where this week we'll be taking a look at The Nice House on the Lake, collecting issues 1 to 12 of the 2021 DC Black Label series by James Tynion IV and Alvaro Martínez Bueno.
So the comic book education continues?
We're talking inappropriate comic books.
You're into comic books, aren't you?
That's comic book shit.
Like in the comic books.
Oh, very good. That's what I say every time, but this time the guy's name means very good, which is fantastic. Benjamin, I think you've mispronounced it there. It's James Tynion IV. I think the IV stands for IV because you want them to hook the comic books into your veins because they're so addictive. Do you see what I'm getting at? I haven't really
what you've done
workshopped
there, Michael.
Yeah, I haven't
I
workshopped
see
it
what
really
you've done there.
I haven't workshopped it really as a joke, but as a concept, I think it works.
Oh, solid. Solid all round, Michael. Solid all round. Yeah, sure. Look, Michael.
What is it?
I can't do that. I can't do that in this
that's the other
podcast,
one.
Michael. It isn't this podcast, yeah. But welcome back, ladies and gents and friends beyond the binary, to Collecting Issues, your monthly comic book club. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for listening. If you're here for the first time, welcome.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Hello.
How's
there.
it going?
Good
If you're
to see you.
back, you probably like us. And if you're
Oh.
new, you'll know within about 10 minutes if you like us or not. So you know what you could do for us, ladies and gentlemen?
What could they do?
Give us an L review
Give
wherever
us
you
an L
listen, will
review.
you?
Give us an L review. Give us a dig out.
That's all we want.
Yeah,
That's
otherwise
all
we'll remain
we
trapped
want.
in this heaven-like limbo that we've created for ourselves for all eternity, unless we get a review.
No good.
No bueno in this case, Benjamin. Benjamin, the listeners, because you record these now, the listeners can see you fucking about with your mic. What are you up to?
Yeah, no, I know. I had to make sure, Michael. I had to make sure it's recording because I wasn't
Oh.
sure. I can't see my little decibels on the screen, Michael.
Oh, very
So-
good. You've got loads of decibels, don't you worry. Benjamin, look,
Grand,
once
right?
people are done reviewing us, they're probably going to come back and they're going to want us to talk about The Lake House starring Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves.
Michael, they're probably going to be disappointed if that's what they're looking for because this is not a classic rom-com featuring ghosts, Keanu Reeves and Sandy Bulls.
I don't think they're ghosts. They fall in love across time. They're not chronologically on the same. They're writing letters to each other, but they're like 20 years apart and they don't realize it. Spoilers, Benjamin, for The Lake House, which I accidentally watched because I genuinely thought that's what we were talking about this week, and I thought I'd found a shortcut.
What's the time gap on the chronological plane?
I think it's about 20 years.
Oh, one of them could be dead then. It could be a ghost thing.
Yeah. No, it's not ghosts. It's chronological. It's about time travel. It's a time travel thing. But Benjamin, this isn't.
Yeah.
Because what even is this?
Michael, what even is this? I have been meaning to read this comic,
Yes.
The Nice House on the Lake, for a while.
Mm.
And this is not what I expected, Michael.
Not at all. Flippin'. So, first of all, quite new 2021, 2022, 2023, a little bit maybe. So, recent
2021 to 2023,
Yeah.
was the publishing.
Recent-ish, 12 issues, pretty much finished, but not really. Yeah, these 12 issues are being described as a cycle.
Yeah, so Cycle 1 is the 12 issues that we've just read, Michael, and Cycle 2 is now being published. It's called The Nice House by the Sea.
Cycle 2, that came out in July 2024, which is only a couple of weeks ago at the time of recording this episode. Benjamin, go back a slide there. I wasn't done.
Oh, you weren't done, Michael.
No, I
see.
wasn't done. I wasn't done because there was other things to talk about. Benjamin. Multi-Eisner Award winning.
Oh, Michael, this has scooped them up on
Benjamin.
on the old circuit.
Yeah, on the circuit from the guy who presents Billy on the Streets, Billy Eisner, who I didn't know gave out comic book awards. I thought he was just a flamboyantly gay actor, but apparently he also does comic book awards, and he thought these were fabulous.
Yep, he absolutely loved them. Michael is being a little facetious there, ladies and gentlemen. The Eisner Awards are, of course, named after legend of the comic book industry, Will Eisner.
Yeah, William, Billy. I'm telling you, Ben, the coincidences are lining up here. And if this comic book has taught me anything, is don't ignore those coincidences.
Not unlike the time traveling antics of The Lake House, starring
Very,
Sandy Bulls
yeah.
and Keanu Reeves, Billy Eisner is also a time traveling comic book sequential artist and
Yes.
Vox Popper.
Yes. Benjamin, shut up about that
Mm,
for a second, though. The biggest shock for me was that this was from
yeah.
DC.
Yeah, it's from the Black Label
Benjamin,
line.
the Black Label is just
Yeah.
Vertigo, isn't it? Would you stop lying?
Yeah, it is absolutely, Michael. This is Vertigo. And the ironic thing about the time of recording now, Michael, is it's just been announced that Vertigo is coming back. So I think the Black Label might cease to be.
Was
I don't
Vertigo
know.
gone? I didn't know Vertigo was gone. How long has Vertigo been gone?
Since Black Label was instituted in about 2021, I think.
Oh,
So they tried
DC
that whole
can,
rebrand thing, Michael,
yeah.
and it hasn't stuck. In a classic kind of way, they tried something new. They got a new director in. The new director came in and said, "Do you remember when people really liked the classic DC logo and it
Mm,
wasn't confusing and it was just the shield of Detective Comics?
yeah, yeah.
Let's go back to that for the entire thing." And everyone went, "Yeah." And do you remember that really established house name of Vertigo, where people understood that it was an alternative mature comics label, and
Mm,
it was well known for that? And people were
yeah.
like, "Yeah, let's go back to
Let's
that.
go back to
let's
that.
let's do
Stop
that.
fucking around. Okay, so
Stop
Black Label's
fucking
gone, and this is going to
around."
be now, Benjamin. This may a Vertigo or Black Label comic. This may be, but it is not in the DC universe, as far as we can tell, and even
No.
more so than the likes of, say, Sandman or and if some of the Vertigo stuff like Constantine, which happens comic superhero adjacent. This is not a superhero comic book.
Yeah, I don't think this has any place within the realm or realms of DC.
This is in
This
the
isn't.
new 52.
No, it's a standalone gig, Michael,
Mm.
as far as I know.
And Ben, look,
So, I mean,
the last thing before we go into it a little bit more,
yeah.
is it? What genre is this? What genre is this? Is this a horror?
I think it's pretty hard to know. It like as with any modern narrative, Michael, that begins to play with the concepts of genre and narrative convention, it's hard to pin it down to a single genre. There are some big influences to this, some that have been cited by the authors themselves, James Tynion the Fourth and Alvaro Martínez Bueno.
So the,
There's a little bit. One of the big ones that got mentioned is The Big Chill, Michael. I don't know if you've ever heard of that movie.
what the hell is the Big Chill? That's
So The
that's
Big Chill.
Mr. Freeze, isn't it? That's when Mr. Freeze takes over Gotham.
I mean, in any Batman narrative under the sun, that's exactly what the name of that particular story would indicate. But in this case, The Big Chill is a 1983 American comedy drama, and it follows a group of baby boomers who reunite after 15 years at the funeral of their friend Alex, who has died tragically after completing suicide.
Oh
The
no!
group consists of former college friends from the University of Michigan,
Oh,
each dealing with
Michigan.
their own. Yeah, and as you know, Michael, life gets complicated after university.
Yes.
And what happens in any 15-year gap, Michael, is that the people you knew have changed and are
Mm.
dealing with brand new challenges that you might not be aware of. So
Oh.
that's exactly what happens. They all gather together for a weekend of remembrance and nostalgia.
Oh.
And yeah, they confront old relationships, regrets, and the passage of time.
Oh, that has got a bit in common with this, doesn't it?
Yeah, so this was cited directly by James Tynion Iv, as
Mm.
you call him,
That's his
as
name.
an
Yep.
influence. And it's huge here, Michael. It's a big influence here because at the heart, I think, of this, outside of a lot of the sci-fi shenanigans that are going on within it, is kind of just a classic drama of our friend group has been together for far too long and this is
Right, Ben.
bloody messy. Yeah.
Let's get into it a little bit because, first of all, full, absolute from the get go, full spoilers in this. This is a comic book club. This is not us reviewing this. This is us and the
Nope.
listeners and the readers who have also read it coming here to have a chat, to give our opinions, and to maybe disagree with each other. So, straight away, full spoilers, right? Walter is an L weirdo.
Yeah.
He's
Big
got
prick.
classic anime glasses and he's a bit of a
Yeah.
weeb. And
Yeah.
he has he appears to be some sort of rich man about town, and he's gathered
Yeah.
up people from his various friend groups. And I've never heard
Mhm.
the term friend group said so much as it is in this comic. It's a
Yes,
very
it's a little much.
it's a very millennial concept of a thing, this. But he has gathered his various friend groups together, and everyone who is a millennial or younger knows what it's like to have friend groups. You have your school friends, you have your college friends, you have the people you met when you were in work, the people from work as they're known. You have your hobby friends, you have your internet friends. And the worst thing that can happen, Ben and I were at a wedding once when we were thanked for coming as and the people from work. That's a little insight into our personal lives there. What was I saying? Yes.
I don't know.
So were you there? Actually, I don't know if you were there. Were you there?
I was either it was a
You can't say
we'll talk
people's
about it
names,
off air.
Ben.
This is
Okay.
not.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, look, anyway, he's dealing with we're all dealing with the trauma and the fear of these various friend groups meeting up, and who's going to get
Yeah.
on and who's linked to. But in this case, there's even more going on. And let me tell you, Ben, straight from the start, this disconnected from me a little bit in this
Go
case
on.
because I think, a little bit older than this. And I was reading this thinking, if I was in my late 20s, early 30s reading this would really resonate with me because friend groups and like which are your main friend groups and how do you know these people, and that all feels really important in your late 20s to early 30s because you're kind of solidifying as a person, I think. But let me tell you, Benjamin, in your late 30s to to mid 40s, much less important.
Yeah, look, it's of its age group, it's of its time. Speaking of, Michael, if the listeners who are listening to us right now would like new friends, you can probably join the Discord to
Hop
this
up on the
very
Discord.
hop up on the Discord so you can read along with our next comic and give
Mm,
us your comments and thoughts. It's linked below in the description. Then you might hear yourself shouted out in this podcast. But Michael, back to your point, absolutely correct. There's an unearned sense of social neediness to
mm,
this that I don't think. Perhaps it's an American thing, Michael. I don't know. This is a millennial kind of piece, I think, to a large degree. It's it's a group that seems to exist very much in a technological age.
yes.
They've all got their own careers, their own things like this, but social hierarchy takes over rather rapidly
Mm,
every time, Michael.
yeah.
It's pretty intense, you know.
Yeah, and a thing, the whole interpersonal drama of this revolves around this concept of friend groups and roles within friend groups and who takes what role in each friend groups. I think it's very interesting. Very, very interesting and telling by its absence that none of them have kids
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
kids are the big difference maker in this whole concept. This feels like it was written by people without kids as well. So that, friend groups and positions in friend groups and new additions to friend groups and how is this person going to fit in with this friend group? They're all now, I mean, you could blame I'm not leveling this as a criticism towards James Tynion Iv because I want him to hook it to my veins. But I think you could level this more as a criticism towards Walter, the character who thinks like
Mm.
this, and towards the characters in this book. Let's look
Yeah.
at the art, not the artist, is what I was saying. I think. Are you sharing
It's
across two screens now, Ben? You absolute show off.
Michael, I'm just trying to open up the different characters because I think what you've said kind of hits the nail on the head there, Michael. One of the things about this is there's a lot of characters, isn't there?
Too many. Too many characters. Too
Arguably,
many characters with the
arguably,
same faces and normal names.
yeah. So I think credit where credit's due. Alvaro Martinez Bueno does a phenomenal job of rendering this horror atmosphere, a horror setting, which is a tough thing to do. His covers are, in my opinion, spectacular
Yes, they are.
for this. His art could be accused of a touch of the face blindness every once in a while, Michael.
Go on.
And I didn't. I found it difficult on occasion to keep up with the different characters and who is who, especially in the women that he drew. Naya blends together with the consultant, whose name escapes me, and I found myself at different times, Michael, going, "Hang on, is this Nora or is it Naya? Is this Ryan
Yes.
or is it?" And eventually, I think the comic itself cops onto that, Michael, and we start to see Ryan, who's one of the primary characters and outliers, in a bright orange hoodie with a black X on it.
Yes.
And that to me was obviously a note. I'd say about halfway through the run where they went, well, look, she's gonna push forward from here
Yeah.
on out. So
This one's the main
probably
character.
we probably need to distinguish her a touch
No,
if
to-
we can.
totally agree with that. And the fact that there are 12 characters in this, there are 12 characters in this. They all have normal names like Meg and Reg and Ryan and Jim and Sam. And I spent a lot of my read time on this going back and going, who in the fuck is Sam? Who the fuck is Sam? And then it's a great representation of growing up as well, how the characters change over time, but also because they change so drastically, it took me a second read through to piece together that the African American girl that they meet in high school is, Christ, I've forgotten her name, Molly?
Nora.
No,
Nora.
Nora is the person who transitions. Nora's wife.
Oh, sorry, not Nora. Yeah. Sorry, Nora's
the
Nora's
scientist.
wife. Yeah, I just need to zoom in here. Michael, 'cause we have it.
So we both have the deluxe edition, Ben, and on the deluxe edition there is a diagram of who everyone is in distinctive clothing with their symbol overlaid over them. And I wish that was on the first page of every issue, to be honest.
Yeah, it's Veronica, Michael, is the
Veronica,
African-American character that
there
we
was a
meet.
character called Veronica. I've read this twice. And
Ronnie
I've
is the
only-
name.
Ronnie.
Ronnie is how she's referred to by the PAL group, you see. So
Oh,
that makes it all the more confusing, Michael, because we are given certain guides to help us understand that, including in issue number 1. And one of the interesting things that I found here, issue number 1 is interspersed. We probably have to frame this a bit more differently. This is very metatextual, Michael. There's a lot of metatext going on. I know. I went back to the old literary theory books from the uni days, Michael, and I've
very
cracked them
good.
open for this. But this is very metatextual, Michael. It's interspersed with surveillance transcripts. It's interspersed with MSN
messages.
Messenger chat logs,
Gmail.
text messages, Gmail, WhatsApp groups, all of those. And those are interspersed within the comic. It is also interspersed with Walter, the alien autistic weeb, who
Yeah, all right. I'll allow it.
who is documenting his first encounters with these people. So as we meet characters, we're not getting the classic panel description or thought bubble that we get from older comics where we just get a little bit of info in the top left-hand corner. What we're getting is his field notes on each of these people. And
Yes.
he introduces them by their full and proper name because, as we discover later on in the comic, this is a field report for an alien race that is conducting some kind of scientific study.
No, I'm just
Or
there,
are-
Ben, very
or are
briefly,
they?
and I apologize for this.
Yeah.
We're never told they're aliens.
True, we never are.
We're never told they're aliens, and that's a big part of the mystery for me. And I personally believe they're actually higher dimensional entities, like four-dimensional beings. But sorry, yeah, it's a field report anyway.
And it's a field report. And those are introduced to us, Michael, as full named characters. They're legal names or they're legal
They're government
definitions.
names.
And then of course the characters themselves refer to them by the nicknames that they've grown over the years.
Reg. What episode is Reg introduced in?
Reg is comic 4, issue 4.
Reg isn't on that document.
Reg isn't on that document, Michael.
No, it's on
He's
the
not.
bottom right of that document. Who's the lady with the reddish hair?
This is Molly, to the best of my knowledge. Molly is a very unusual character, Michael, in it. In that, sorry, I'm trying to click on the screen share as opposed to the actual thing. But Molly in this, Michael, is she's the accountant.
All right.
It's never that never plays a role, to my knowledge. Is many of the characters, I suppose, in some sense, Michael, display their nom de guerre or their nom de apocalypse at some
Mm,
point. Molly doesn't. Molly just kind of falls apart.
yeah, that's her
And we
job.
never see any accounting prowess
But I think that
throughout
actually
the comic,
works.
but it's
That
interesting.
does make sense.
Yeah.
That works in the plot because we do learn eventually that Walter, and we'll talk. Let's veer back into Walter while we're here. But we
Yeah.
learn eventually that Walter has gone off piste. Basically,
Big time.
he hasn't picked the people he was supposed to pick. He's picked people he liked, and
Yeah.
kind of stretched the definitions of the roles to suit
Yeah.
bringing in people he liked and wanted to save, which we're led to believe. But this could all be part of the bloody ruse, don't forget. But we are led to believe, because maybe he knows that they know that he knows that they know, which I think is what this comic's subtitle could be. But maybe yeah. So that feels on point that he's brought her in because he likes her, not because she's really a mathematician or an accountant of note.
Yeah. So you're spot on there, Michael. The great mystery of this comic is Walter himself or
Hmm.
themselves. I don't know if we could describe him as a him. And he or
He's some
they are a fascinating study
he's some sort of yoke.
in he's some sort of yoke. So I like your definition, Michael. I don't think it's aliens at all. I think it's transdimensional beings. And there's a spectacular panel in issue 1 that I think is a beautiful display of not only Alvaro Martínez Bueno's prowess as an artist, but also a great moment of, oh fuck, what fresh hell is this?
What's going on?
And it's the bit where Nora loses her temper and swings like a fire poker through his skull,
Yeah.
and it just crescendos into this spectacular flesh tornado in iridescence, and it's amazing because it's a clear moment of, oh, what the fuck
Oh, this is
is
mental.
this?
This is way more mental than we
Uh,
thought it was going to be.
and what I love, Michael, is he then in the same page, in the same breath almost, he displays his own reality warping power and he removes her wrist.
Mm.
He's just like, that's less of that, and he does it, and it's brilliant because it destabilizes the entire narrative that we're viewing, because on the one hand it establishes that Walter is some kind of extra dimensional godlike being,
Mm.
and two, that he has control over the environment he's in, so we can trust absolutely nothing that
Yeah.
we've seen until that point.
Gross.
It's a great move. Walter is also, in my opinion, the only properly fleshed out character.
He's got lots
We
of flesh.
get
Too much flesh, I'd
He's
argue.
got too much flesh, a tornado of it, in
Yeah, he's
fact.
mostly flesh.
Um, so he's pretty fascinating as a character, but he's also, we only understand Walter through everyone else's perception of him almost. And Walter is the classic stranger at the table. He's the outlier in every group, and yet he's a bit of a big time meddler. And one of the things that I loved about this is we never see Walter's eyes. You mentioned that he has classic anime glasses that constantly block
Mm.
his eyes.
Saves
And Michael,
animating
it's an
the eyes.
immediate thing. It saves animating the eyes. But Michael, it immediately puts your teeth on edge because we can never see his eyes, and it's a clear symbolic marker, I think, that he's not to be trusted from the
Yeah.
get go. From that, you know,
It also marks him out visually that he's the easiest
yes,
of them to pick out because he's the only one who has something so distinctive. Now, I guess a couple of the women have brightly colored hair and different skin tones, but there's so many characters in this that Walter's opaque glasses really make him stand out as visually
mm,
distinctive from the rest of them.
mm.
It's also reminiscent of the Corinthian, who's a really famous Vertigo villain. And it is that thing of, if you can't see their eyes, there's probably something terrifying behind there.
Yeah. And Walter does have a lot of teeth in places there shouldn't be. We
Yeah,
see it a bunch of
everywhere.
times when he's his
Mostly
big ugly
teeth.
wuggly form. Ugh.
And
Mostly teeth and jaws.
one of the things I really enjoy about this is it plays with the meta of the narrative form, which I always enjoy. It does something which I really I don't know what it is about this that I thoroughly enjoy, but it has a montage of people arriving at the island and meeting each other for the first time, and obviously it kind of cuts to those scenes. It uses the what's the word I'm looking for? It uses the conventions of the media to cut out the travel. And
Yeah.
it doesn't have we don't have 12 issues of the flight from New York to Minnesota.
Yeah. Oh, it's been delayed. Oh
Yeah.
no. How are we going to get out to the gang now?
And
Yeah.
as seasoned comic book readers, we don't question how they got there. In the same way, in a film, when a film opens and the characters are already in situ, you don't question how they got there. Which leaves room for that lovely play of, does anybody remember how we got here? And
Yeah.
a kiss at the chef, as they say.
Yeah. Kiss of the chef, as they say.
Mm,
Look, I think James Tynion the fourth does a spectacular job of writing this, Michael. I love those primarily the first four issues, but I like the first six issues of this a lot because it is a constant kind of bending of the classic unreliable narrator. And you kind of hit the nail on the head when you gave this a subtitle when you said, "Who knows what we know, what they know?
does
Who
he
well,
know what
maybe
we
they
know
don't
that he
know."
knows? Because yeah,
Yeah,
there's a really great moment of that when one of the characters, fuck if I know who it was, but one of the characters goes off in the woods to explore, and he
yeah,
starts getting a head wreck. Basically, he goes, "This is fucking wrecking my head," and I have a feeling that this has been put here to wreck my head. So I'm not going to
yeah,
engage with this person trying to fuck with me anymore by letting them fuck with me. But it turns out that that wasn't what it was, that it actually was something that they were supposed to find. And that's
yeah.
a really good series of mysteries. And that brought me to mind of, I wish James Tynion Ive had written the TV show Lost 20 years ago. Because
I yeah, it would have been more payoff
there would have
back in
been
the
more
day.
payoff. A lot of this feels like if Lost was good, if Lost had more than just its surface concept.
This is if Lost was good. Now there's a tagline for this comic, Michael.
Mm.
There's a tagline for this comic.
Hey,
This does,
did you like the TV
yeah.
show Lost? Well, imagine if it was good.
Imagine if it was good.
Imagine if
There's,
they'd fucking thought about it before they made the fucking thing. What
I
would that
think
be
what I
like?
liked. So we started off there with a pretty interesting thing of like the unreliable narrator taken to a brand new level as a trope in this. We're very used to an unreliable narrator knowing they're an unreliable narrator. That's a very common trope. They are lying intentionally to get us to believe a point of view in a film, in a comic, in media in general. That's what we get. This takes it to an interesting level because they don't know if they know something or knew something, because one of the primary things that the flesh tornado Walter establishes is that he has a forget power, which
Mm,
is where he simply tells people forget, and they do. They reset. And there's one phenomenal reason occurs, Michael, after the gang finds the other house on the lake and they break into
yes.
it and they find Reg. And Reg immediately springs into action. He's like, "Oh no, we can fix all this." And Walter goes, "Oh, bollocks.
Oh, fuck a
They
duck.
fucked it." And he has to reset it and insert himself into it. So it's
Right.
a very interesting new meta narrative. Go on.
Almost lost me at that point. That for me
Yes,
was
I'd
the
say so.
low point of the series because at that point, when they had Walter and Reg in the house and
Mm,
Nora was in the kind of featureless limbo, the backstage, I read that whole issue and then went back and went, what the fuck? Who, what happened? And
yeah.
like, that what the fuck is sometimes great, but it wasn't a what the fuck, what's going on. It was a what the fuck, I didn't, who the fuck is Reg? I has this guy been in it the whole time? Was he in the flashbacks? Like, it was a case of okay, it's a clever twist and it's a reset. It's always a risk resetting your narrative. It's always a risk
Yeah,
doing a time jump or a narrative reset in the middle of your story. Big risk to take, and it doesn't not pay off. It works out nicely, but it feels a little bit like that switch highlights the weaknesses of having so many characters and
yeah,
only 3 or 4 of them really being fleshed out. Who the
yeah.
fuck is Steve? Who's Steve?
Steve is the reporter.
Is he?
Yeah, Steve is. No, sorry, Steve is not the reporter. Sorry, you got me. I think Steve is the comedian.
No, Dave's the
Steve
comedian.
Oh, for God's sake, who's Steve?
Steve's the
Steve's the
reporter.
pianist.
Yes, Steve's the pianist.
Is this
The
Steve
tall
here in the
blonde
middle?
guy. Yeah. Is his name
Yeah,
Steve? Let's
his name
find
is
out.
Steve, and he's married to Naya.
Yeah.
Rick is his
Rick.
name, so it's not him. I think you've pulled Steve out of your arse. I don't think that's Rick. That's Arturo, the lover
Okay.
of Sam.
Right.
And there's no Steve, Michael. I don't
No.
know who you're talking
Alright.
about. There is no Steve. So
Rick
Mick was
then.
reading a different comic. Perhaps Steve is a character in the Lake House.
Yeah, it's Keanu
Michael
Reeves.
also
God damn it.
searched for this. God damn it, Keanu. But look, I remember reading some of this, Michael, and thinking that, it's very difficult to keep up. There are 4 key characters in this, I think, by the end of it. And the 4 characters are Walter, first and
Yes.
foremost, Nora, who's significant,
Yes.
Ryan, who is
Yes.
also significant, and probably Reg
Yes, I
as
agree.
the last forerunner there. So they're the 4 that get a bit of time. And what irritated me about that was initially, Michael, I thought the huge swathe of characters that we had to keep track of was supposed to be some kind of meta insight into what Walter is dealing with, where he's trying to balance, because Walter makes it very clear in, I think it's the 4th or 5th issue, that he has gone, as you said, off piste.
Yeah.
He's overstuffed the house.
Yeah,
Ryan is an addition that isn't supposed to be there.
Mm.
It's heavily hinted that she's not even a very good artist, and
She's
that
rubbish.
Walter just fancies the pants off her,
Mm.
and that's why she's there. And I thought initially that difficulty in tracking characters, Michael, was supposed to be kind of an understanding of the pressure that Walter is under from the reader's perspective, because he's trying to balance all this in his own way, but it doesn't pan out that way. And the 4 characters that I mentioned are the only ones that get not even an arc. I don't think it's even fair to call it an arc. They're the
No,
only
not
ones that
really.
get screen time or
Yeah,
panel
yeah.
time.
And there's an interesting scenario. There's an interesting scene where Nora has sat down with everyone's symbols and is drawing links between them, and goes nowhere. Irrelevant. Doesn't matter.
So I think the symbol and the links between them is supposed to be her working out the console that Walter employed her to design. And I think it's a record of that wasn't erased. So one of the central conceits of this, Michael, is, and I think this takes heavily from Bad Egg Joss Whedon's Cabin in the Woods.
Oh, go on. No
Is
proof
the
that Joss
notion
Whedon's
of
a bad egg, by the way.
get out of here.
He might
Get
just be
out
a
of
bit of
here.
a prick, but Joss Whedon, I
Get
don't think has done
out
anything
of
illegal
here.
yet. Anyway, go on.
Get out of here. You can be a bad egg and not do illegal things, Michael. Look at us. 2 white men with
We're
podcasts.
always doing illegal shit, and we're still good eggs.
We don't put it on the podcasts.
Yeah.
So come here to me, Michael.
What
was I saying?
I don't
You
remember.
threw me off with a
Bad
witty,
egg, Joss
witty
Whedon,
joke.
Cabin in the Woods.
The Cabin in the Woods. Because as we move on, it's not that Walter has inherent power. It's that Walter has constructed a biome or a terrarium that is almost modular and programmable. It's a giant kind of holographic or micro reality, a microcosm, if you want, of Milwaukee that he can control. And at one point, as you said, he lets Nora into the back end development console of this thing and reveals the console to her. And the console is the set of symbols. And it turns out that it's like he relays it to her as a character creator character creation screen that can adjust different stats for people. But it turns out later in it, when Ryan starts to fuck around with the console, it turns out that Nora has a flashback and realizes that she designed the console for Walter.
Yes.
She designed the intricacies of the thing. So I think what that was a nod to that she had worked this out for Walter on a piece of paper and then had it erased from her mind. Now, does that successfully translate to the reader? No, I don't think it does. I think you have to sit down and you have to think about it a bunch of times and you have to go, oh, that's what that is. But that's a classic metatext trick
Yeah.
where, you know,
Sorry.
where you read these things and you go back and you read again. I cannot for the life of me, Michael, imagine reading this week by week
No, God.
in
Imagine.
a thing.
Jesus Christ. Month by month, even. Which is how
No,
comics are
I,
usually
I,
presented. Absolute
I
insanity. You pick this
couldn't.
up and go, what in the hell is this? Imagine accidentally picking up issue 3 of this. You'd be absolutely bewildered. Now, look, that's not to say, Benjamin, that something is bad because it's complex and it
No,
needs
not
you
at
to
all.
pay attention and it rewards rereading. I love things that reward rereading. I was reading Walter's other emails in his inbox in the meta things going, oh, which of these are going to turn
Yeah,
out to be relevant? And like that was all
yeah,
great. But there's a fine, fine line between having rewarding things that are going to be really cool to notice and go back on and
yeah.
having a frustratingly large cast that has very little to distinguish them. And that's really my only criticism of this as a work, as a story, as a piece of art, as a comic book, is that there are too many characters and there's not enough to distinguish between them. And it kind of jokes at its own expense with this, with saying, what's your mutant name? And
Yeah.
nearly if they had stuck to using those names, this would be an easier read. Or if, as they used to in comic books, for that very reason, everyone had a vibrant, colorful costume that not only was different for each character, but also said something about them. Like, for example, Nora is kind of gothy, depressed, um,
Dresses all in black.
dresses all in black, but the consultant is a Caucasian woman with darkish hair who
Yeah.
dresses mostly in black, and the doctor is part Indian, part Caribbean or something, but also she has medium length brownish hair and dresses mostly in black. And it nearly would have been better if they had been given a distinctive outfit to wear. I know it might have broke the immersion and would it made it maybe much harder to sell this as a limited series TV show. But
Yeah, I mean,
if they had
yeah.
had the Running Man-esque jumpsuits on, I think it would have been
Yeah.
easier.
I think they do attempt as time goes on to remedy that because they may have realized themselves that 12 regular human characters
Mm,
are tough to distinguish in a realistic comic.
yes.
Because this is grounded in reality. Alvaro Martínez Bueno does a wonderful job of giving us realistic depictions of humans. I think, personally, on a personal level, he does a great job. It doesn't hold a candle to his work on environments
Mm,
and building layouts and stuff like that, because I think that was spectacular. He has a real grip of perspective that I thought was very impressive. But they do attempt to adjust their color palettes, I
distinctiveness? Yeah,
guess.
distinctiveness.
Yeah, so we find out at one point that Walter is basically functions as the world's fastest Amazon Prime subscription
Yes, which
for the
is
gang.
great. The
That's
the
fantastic
the
stuff.
implications that come out of it and the fun that's had with it are both great.
There's some really interesting stuff. So I think that's issue 3 that primarily focuses on that new idea of how they get stuff.
Mm,
And Dave the comedian
yeah,
is obsessed with ordering everything he can get his goddamn hands on.
yeah,
He is an
brilliant.
impulse shopper to his core. And it leads to him, at the very least, being distinguishable for the rest of the thing because he buys a series of ridiculous suits, Michael,
Yeah.
that he wants to wear for fun. No,
Mm.
nothing more. He is an absolute impulse kid, and
Uh,
he becomes quite distinct.
well, I think that's how he's coping with it, isn't it? That's his coping
Yeah,
mechanism. A lot of this is about
yeah,
the coping mechanism. We haven't talked about how grotesque the apocalypse is, because it
yeah.
is. It's one of the
It's
most
awful.
grotesque holocaust apocalypses we've seen. We only see grotesque holocausts in real life. It's one of the most
Yeah,
grotesque apocalypses we've seen in media ever. The people's skin coming off like goop is shocking and horrifying.
awful,
So
awful.
each of the characters' coping methods with it. I think that's a big part of the point of this is the drama of it is let's see how they cope. The doctor copes by becoming the group mother. Dave
Yeah,
copes by becoming a Joker and dressing up like the Riddler. Molly copes
doesn't cope.
doesn't cope at all. She copes by breaking
She
down.
collapses.
Yeah. Sam copes by trying to find solutions.
An explosive anger.
Yeah.
He's just so angry for all of this.
Yeah.
Um,
Where's Arturo while all that's happening? I don't know. I didn't even know he was a different character until the acupuncture scene.
Arturo exists, I think, primarily as a salve for Sam. I think it's supposed to be. Hmm. It's Yeah. So I mean, the coping mechanisms are pretty fascinating. You've got a great point there. At its heart, it's a human drama. Do you know what I mean? For a lot
Mm.
of this, don't get me wrong. There's an underlying mystery and stuff like that, but it is a study in the dynamics of people, and there are a few areas where we see that. And I suppose one of the great fears that this encapsulates, and I think it does it quite well, is the people we become around our friends and the people we maybe grew out of, but we revert to in the company of certain friends. So, uh, one of the main things that Arturo serves to kind of inform is that he has his own existing relationship with Sam. They are partners. They are in love, and very much so. He acts as a calming influence over Sam, who has an explosive temper and is a bit of a dick
Mm.
by all accounts. He's just a bit of a dick. And Arturo acts as a salve to that. And Arturo actually confides in, I think it's Walter or I can't remember who it is. He confides at one point, though, that you all have a picture of Sam in your heads and you have seen a side of Sam that I will never get to see. And it's an interesting study into what we as humans, outside of apocalypses and things like that, what we show to other people. And I think it's really interesting. I think it does a good job of that because there's, above all this, Walter is an emotional manipulator. If you were to take away his reality warping, his connection to the apocalypse, his connection to the otherworldly beings that threaten humanity, he's a bit of a busybody in a friend group, and he constantly makes decisions on behalf of other people or tries to fix their relationships or pushes them down a certain path, or wants to make sure Nora continues to be a writer, or tries to make sure that Holly stays with this guy because he's decided this guy is good for Molly. Sorry, not Holly, Molly. There's a few different moments of that in it, and at its heart, Walter's a bit of a shite in
Oh, he's
that
an absolute
regard,
shite bag.
because he just
Straight in the
wants
bin
to
with
be
him.
involved in their lives. And one of the things that Nora does, because Nora is a trans man in this particular narrative, she
Or
transitions.
woman, as she actually
Sorry, she is male to female, and has transitioned at this point in the story, but she gets a kind of a monologue, I suppose, a dramatic monologue when she's imprisoned by Walter, because Walter takes
Mm.
turns imprisoning his two best friends, because he's just a great egg, that
He's
Walter.
great. He's a good
Just a
lad.
great egg.
Yeah, he's a good
Yeah,
good
what do you
fella,
do
isn't
when
he?
your pals? Yeah,
Get them
what do you do when your
fucking trapped in a
pals?
room.
Yeah, put them in the sandbox. Put them in the developer sandbox
Yeah.
outside of the main continuity. But yeah, so she gets a monologue, Michael, where she is just raging at Walter, because she sits there and she goes, "And you couldn't stand that I was going to transition and diverge from the plan. You couldn't let me do that. And you got involved and you weighed in. It's the panel where she's sitting by herself in the dark, Michael.
Oh, fuck me. I remember that panel, but I don't remember that context at
There's
all.
there's 3 pages of it, and she's slowly getting angrier at Walter's kind of busybody nature,
Hmm.
which is now much more sinister, we understand, because Walter has been manipulating these people since they were children in many
In
cases.
some of the cases, yeah.
Um, yeah, in some of the cases. Yeah, sorry. And they've grown apart. I think what Walter struggles with the most is that humans change, and so do their friendships.
Hmm.
And they talk about it a lot in terms of, you know, we only understand Walter and his history through the other characters. We rotate through their perspectives to understand them. And there's a very good storytelling convention done with that. Each issue starts with a true post-apocalypse version of each of the characters. They're in their Mad Max era gear. They're wrapping up for battle in some cases. Issue 1, it's Ryan. Issue 2, it's the pianist. Issue 3, and they do a
Yes.
little monologue and a flashback. Very good, Michael. They do a little monologue and a flashback, and they describe their interaction with the being known as Walter
Hmm.
and how they came to connect with him.
I
And
think.
as the 12
Sorry.
issues.
Yeah, no,
No,
go
go
on.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
As the 12 issues progress, they slowly realize how calculating he was. And I think it's the consultant, or Sarah, as she's known in this. She describes it as.
There's someone called Sarah? What the fuck?
I think her name is Sarah,
All
yeah.
right. Anyway,
But
yeah.
she's the consultant. She
Yeah.
works in DC, and she describes how Walter would pull people into him,
Hmm.
shine his spotlight on them for a month, and then suddenly discard them
Hmm.
as if he was assessing or calculating something, or they would go on the list or wouldn't go on the list. And it was very interesting to see that. But he is just this awful calculating busybody, Michael, that is using people up, and it's very strange.
Benjamin, I'm either going to say something insightful here or something terribly revealing about myself. But in that sense, there's almost a touch of the Walters in us all.
Yeah.
Because we're
Yeah.
all kind of a locus of our own social circles. You know, we all have that feeling of I'm the only. We all have that feeling when you have a birthday, and you know, again, I'm 42. This doesn't happen to me anymore. The next time this will happen is at my funeral, when there's people going,
Michael, stop that.
how did you know, Mick? But when you're in your 20s and 30s and you have a birthday party and you know your college friends are there and your work friends your people from work are there and you are the only unifying thing that has brought them together, and you sit at that party and go, what's my role here? What's my job in keeping this thing on track? maybe
Yeah.
that's maybe that's just me.
No, I think. Look, there's not a single social circle on the planet where we don't struggle to figure out
But
what
that's what
we're
I'm saying.
doing there.
That's no, I don't think that's true. That's Ben, you and I think, are just about different enough in age where I think that is probably true for you, but no longer true for me. And that's what I was saying at the start
Earlier.
of this, where
Yeah.
I in this situation now, I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Do not care.
Yeah.
Like, these people
Yeah.
don't know each other. They only know each other through me. I don't see how that's my problem.
Yeah.
Like, well, who gives a
That's.
fuck?
Yeah.
I could
And
walk into any event, Ben, and just act like you're supposed to be there. It's grand in your 40s.
I think Walter is the worst example of that, because he lets his own emotional
Damage.
damage,
Yeah.
yeah, infect other people or impact other people. Because Walter as a teenager is the worst.
Is he?
He constantly he turns to his friends and he's like, "Do you think people like me? Do you think people want to be my pal?" And it puts the onus on them to be like, "Oh, come on, chief, come on, bud.
Yeah. No.
Everybody likes you.
No, they
Everybody's your
don't.
pal.
You're
Yeah, maybe if we could see your fucking eyes every once in a
yeah.
while, pal, you
You're
know,
creepy and
maybe
you're doing
people
a
would
big
like you
third rock.
more.
Yeah, you're creepy and you're doing a big third rock from the sun. Give it over.
Stop that.
You're
Stop
doing
that.
more. You're
Get
doing
out of
more of a
here.
French Stewart than a Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. And people have noticed. People
Yeah.
have noticed. But come here to me. One of the things you mentioned there earlier on was their vision of the apocalypse, and I think it's
Hmm.
fucking awful, Michael. And one of the awful revelations in this, Michael, is that Nora wrote the apocalypse without realizing it.
Yeah. Here, right, Ben. I'm sorry to cut across you, but we're going to hint big spoilers here. Did she? Because if we're led to believe that Walter is a cog in the machine that created this apocalypse, then why did an off the cuff conversation with his friend Nora decide the route that the apocalypse would take?
That's a good question. That's a
So
good
someone's
question.
lying.
Well, I mean, that boils us back down to the one of the core questions here is, can we trust Walter and his vision of the apocalypse? Because
We don't know the apocalypse has happened.
we don't. And that's a big question that we have to ask ourselves here, Michael. Has it happened?
Mm,
Is I mean, it's strongly hinted at in the little vignettes at the beginning of each thing where they're mad maxed up to the
yeah,
nines, that there is some kind of apocalypse having taken place.
but
However,
is that an
they're all still
apocalypse?
on
Yeah, exactly.
well, they're all still in the construct
Yeah,
because they're all in the same set pieces they were always in.
yeah,
And that's where it gets interesting. So they could be in the middle of an absolute apocalypse, or they could be being experimented on by extra dimensional beings who haven't wiped out the rest of humanity, but just want to understand what happens if you would,
yeah, yeah. Or
or if you were to.
this whole thing could be a fucking Black Mirror episode, Ben, where these
Yeah.
aren't even the real people. This could be that Star Trek episode of Black Mirror where this is all essentially happening inside a computer program, and that's why they don't really remember getting there or how it happened. This could be anything. But that's what I like about this over and above Lost. It feels like it could be it gives us a lot, but this could go anywhere.
Yes. Yes, it
Anywhere.
could. Yes, it could. And I think that's one of its strengths and one of its weaknesses, because in one sense, it's not satisfying to get to the end of this and go, ah, balls. But in another sense, it is kind of, pardon me,
Yes.
it is kind of satisfying to see. So the culmination of this, or I suppose the final arc of this, is that they have to make a decision, and Walter gives them a false decision to make.
Yes.
Walter says, you can choose one of you to die, you can shut down the program, or you can choose that I die and keep the program running. And it turns out that that's not true. He's given them a false perception of him dying. The gang bands together and says, fuck you, Walter, and shoots him
Mm.
because he's been made human by the construct,
Yeah,
which
has he though?
in itself is a red herring. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like, if I met an omnipotent being and it said, oh yeah, just hit that button there and I'll be human. And
Yeah.
then, you can just, I'd be like, get the fuck out of here, Corpselic.
Yeah, Cork Select.
Fucking
I'm not falling for
chancer.
this, you
I
fifth dimensional
fucking
arsehole.
don't you chance with me, you transdimensional being. I know what
Mm.
you're up to.
Mm.
Oh, then I'll shoot you, will you? And you'll pop up at the next end of the arc, will you? Fucker.
Like a little homunculus.
And Nora must know that. Nora must know that as a writer, because she's just there going, I know what I'd do in that particular
No, but-
case. But anyway,
But sorry, Ben. We know that Nora knows.
yeah, she remembers at the end, doesn't she? She accesses
Yeah.
one final repressed memory at the end, which is that he's not dead and he's
He's
still
not
out
dead.
there.
And
that there's a competition to come or something. They're one in many
Mm.
possible bubbles,
Mm.
and something's going to happen, because it is hinted at that there's backups
Yes.
in the thing, and people go, oh, there's backups, and it's like, yes, you didn't think they were going to pick 12 people from one entire species
10.
and put them in a bubble. 10 if you're not off piste like young
Yeah.
Walter.
Get back on piste, Walter. You pieced everyone off.
You ski with your hips, Walter, with your hips.
Hips.
But I suppose one of the things we can't avoid much longer, Michael, and we haven't talked about it much, is this is, of course, it came out in 2021. This is a COVID thing by any measure.
The old Penny D.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hinted at the beginning, where Nora is taking people's temperatures with one of the guns that we all had pointed in our faces at one point or another, the thermometer guns.
Mm.
And there's a
Wait a
lot of
minute.
that in here, Michael. Yeah.
People were pointing those at your face?
Where are they putting it on you, Michael?
Oh, I've been violated.
Oh, you've a claim to put into the HSE.
I do.
Um,
Go up the butt, Benjamin.
not in my case, but look, hey, Michael, maybe we went to different doctors. I don't know.
To each their own.
To each their own, as they say. But this is very much a COVID narrative. And James Tynion IV said that he had pitched this for years, but had found a new angle during the pandemic. And I went, yeah, of course it did. It's undoubtedly what many people experienced when they chose their friend group or their friend bubble that they were allowed to interact in. And I suppose there is the threat of an apocalypse just outside the door,
Yes.
but it's not directly presenting a threat if you stay in the bubble, if that makes sense. So it plays on that anxiety or that collapse of society. And I suppose one of the big questions it deals with there, Michael, is would you just turn away from the apocalypse and spend time on your paradise, as Walter assumed his friends would do, because
Yes.
Walter is an idiot?
Mm.
Or would you turn and say, oh no, well, fuck this. Sam wants to leave almost immediately. Piano Man becomes his accomplice, becomes Walter's accomplice. One of my least favorite plots was Piano Man becoming Walter's confidant and steerer of the group, because I went, now this is bollocks. Where's this going? And it didn't go anywhere in the end.
It did
Piano
anywhere.
Man just loses his
Yeah.
wife
Yeah.
and is depressed. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's awful. That's gone nowhere at all.
Yeah.
But it's
Fucking son of a bitch.
Piano Man, Billy Joel. Go up there and Billy Joel at you, Billy Joel.
Yeah.
But look, I mean,
What?
unmistakably good, right? This is a good comic,
it's
in
great.
my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's great.
It's written very well. The
Well-
art is spectacular.
There are individual panels where it's not written really well. I wish I had it in front of me. I wish I had the panel open. But there's one panel where someone says something along the lines of, and I'm probably not going to exaggerate it enough, but someone says something along the lines of, that's what Meg said to Reg to get Reg to change his mind about Sam. And I was like, what?
I've
What's
just
it?
lost. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Anyway,
That
But yeah.
does.
undeniably good.
It is more coherent than I thought any 12-issue comic could be when it was that complexly layered in the first place. I sat back from this and I went, right, I'm going to need to digest this for a while, but well done, James. Well done, James. That was
Who the
good.
fuck is
You've
James?
done something there.
Oh,
James
the writer.
Tynion the fourth.
Yeah, the writer. Yeah, sorry. I thought it was another character.
The writer.
The writer, yeah.
And I think Jordi Belair, the colorist, and Alvaro Martínez Bueno do a fantastic job as well. I think the lake house setting is magic. I think it's, and I mean magic in the Irish sense of something being good, not that it's actually a fantasy setting. I think it can shift on a dime between a horror setting, an idyllic setting, a prison, and a paradise. And I think it rotates through all four of those rather seamlessly to fit the story. I think it's a great thing, and I think they designed it particularly well. I think the buildings that are designed by Reg and in reality designed by Martínez Bueno are the pinnacle of modern American architecture, in that they are big, luxurious, elegant things made of glass and steel that are actually quite imposing and uncomfortable
Yeah.
when you get up close to them.
Get them out of there.
You're just like,
they're gross.
it looks great from a helicopter, but once you're up next to it, you're like, oh, this is a big obsidian massive horror. What is this?
Absolute fucking
what
horror
is
show.
this?
It's like the main character's house in The Invisible Man from Blumhouse a few years ago. This horrible modern glass and steel obnoxious Glass Onion as well. There's touch of Glass Onion about where they are.
Absolutely.
Where it's like, this is just an edifice to American overindulgence.
And it is that. It is, and it works as that. It imbues it with that characteristic so that it does unnerve us. I think not only as international readers, because I think automatically it's a bit of an alien concept to see that kind of luxuriousness. But the characters themselves can't get over the setting quite often. They're like, Jesus fucking Christ, what is this?
Yeah, and it's full
It's
of guns.
otherworldly. It's full of guns. That's the most American thing about it. There's a basement full of guns. I think those are probably going to be important in the Nice House by the Sea, Michael,
Right.
which is the sequel to this, because apparently they're all going to have to fight each other. But come here to me, Michael. Give me your final thoughts on this comic, because we're drawing rapidly to a close here.
I thought this was fabulous. It brought me to mind of the classics of Vertigo, the art style, the design. It brought me to mind, although it's nowhere near them in terms of plot, but of classic kind of British invasion of comics era meta twisty narrative comics like Transmetropolitan and The Invisibles, even, while being a little bit more grounded and a little bit more structured in its storytelling. I loved the extra dimensional nature of the alien threat rather than just being obvious, easy to identify aliens. I really liked the gradual unfolding of a mystery into a scenario rather than mostly dead ending off or turning out to be irrelevant. Some of
Yeah.
it doesn't do that very well, like the alien statue things. They don't really go anywhere, and their
No.
peculiar design doesn't lead to anything. And there's some things that are a little bit disappointing in that sense. But overall, I thought this was excellent. The art is essentially flawless. The only flat out criticism I have against it that I don't like is that the characters, there are really 4 or 5 characters and then 7 or 8 minor characters who don't get enough development and aren't distinctive enough. And that makes it a little bit trickier than it should be to read. It makes it a little bit trickier than it should be to flow with.
I would agree with you. It's
But I thought overall
intense
it
in
was
that way.
fabulous.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as a comic. Definitely not the comic I signed up to read,
Not
Michael.
at
I
all.
thought it was going to be a much more classical kind of cabin in the woods horror.
Mm.
But something I really ended up enjoying once I got to dig my teeth into it a good bit. I I think it's a very good comic. I loved the design of Walter as an otherworldly being, because he does feel distinctly alien every time you see him in that transdimensional form, and not a classic kind of I'm a grey man or I'm
Mm.
a it's something beyond the ken of human comprehension. It's he's very good in that regard. He's a real Cronenbergian kind of
Mm.
Lovecraftian thing that just exists. And it's all the more unnerving because he's like, I'm doing this to help you. I'm your friend. And you're like, Walter, would you ever fuck
Fuck off,
off?
Walter, you absolute prick.
Fuck off, Walter, you absolute pillock. But yeah, a good Halloween read all round, Michael. Good Halloween read all round. I enjoyed that. But ladies and gentlemen, the most important thing here is, did you enjoy it? That's what I want to know, Michael.
Benjamin, I give it 11,000 transdimensional thumbs up. Now, unfortunately,
That
you can't tell how many that is and whether that's good or bad on a transdimensional scale because 4 dimensions, I guess.
It's a solid 7.5 for those of you that don't speak dimensional trans speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, come here to me, ladies and gentlemen. I'm
What?
only interested in what you have to say because I've already read it. And there's a few ways that you can let us know. First of all, if you're listening to us on Spotify, leave us a comment down below there.
Do go on.
Leave us a comment. You can comment on Spotify. If you're watching us on YouTube, leave us a bloody comment
Hello.
down below there.
Down there.
Do it now. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, right there.
Look at us. Hello.
Right there, down below. Ladies and gentlemen,
We're very British on
if you
YouTube.
are-
Hello.
If you're only tuning into us for the first time, we are Collecting Issues, your monthly comic book club. Why don't you give us a follow or a subscribe or a bloody review wherever you're listening if you enjoyed it? We do one comic a month. We chat about it on our Discord. It's linked below in the description. Leave us a review wherever you listen and join us as we read our next comic,
Ooh,
Michael,
what is
for
it?
November. Our November comic, Michael, is Friday.
Oh, Friday, more like it.
The 2021 Image Comics Murder Mystery Occult Mayhem series
Oh, I love mayhem.
from Ed Brubaker, Marcos Martin, and Munza Vicente.
Oh,
Hope I got that right.
You
Hope
probably
I got
didn't.
that right, Michael.
Probably not.
But we'll be reading books 1 and 2, the collected trade paperbacks 1 and 2 from that for the month of November. And of course, we'll be recording our final one for that, ladies and gentlemen,
Yes.
at the end of November, and you could be shouted out on this very podcast. We also want to know, ladies and gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, or trans-dimensional beings that might be listening and about to trap us in a hexagon of a nice Irish scene in the Wicklow
Fucking
Mountains in a
don't
lake
do
house.
it.
Don't do it. Let me die in goop. Let me die
Yeah.
in goop. But if you are listening, what are you reading, ladies and gentlemen? Go
What are you
on,
reading?
tell us more.
I'm
Let
reading
us
mostly
know.
Spider-Man.
Let us
now.
know. Yeah, you love Spider-Man, Michael.
I
Michael
don't.
loves Spider-Man.
I think I need to break up with
He does.
Spider-Man. I don't care what he's about anymore. Look, there's Spider-Man there. What's he doing? Just
There's
leoping
Spider-Man
about the
there.
place
What's
all
he
the time.
doing? Spider-Man just having a chat with Tombstone.
Yeah,
Oh, I don't like that, Michael.
dull
Don't
enough
like that.
issue, to be honest.
But yeah, he's having a chat with Tombstone.
Yeah.
What can you
Ben,
expect?
Ben, I noticed
Yeah.
you've dropped the second comic book from the description of the thing. Is that a branding decision?
I don't know, but I've dropped it for today, Michael.
We used to say the monthly comic book club, but now you're just saying the monthly comic book club.
Yes, maybe it's a
is
branding
Is
decision.
that a branding decision? Is that the decision made here with the listeners on the case?
Are we calling it a stream? We call it streamlining the brand? Is that
Are we
what we're doing?
streamlining the brand? Oh no.
I don't know. But ladies and gentlemen, go on. If you enjoyed this, tell your friends about it. Share this episode around and give the comic a read, ladies and gentlemen. If you're listening to us, James Tynion or Alvaro Martínez Bueno, come on the podcast. Do an interview with us about this very comic. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us
But
more.
Benjamin, I'd be slightly embarrassed about all that giving out I did about there being too many characters.
I think they probably know themselves, Michael. They know themselves.
What if he calls me a fuckhead? I don't know if I'd
Sure, it's good podcasting, Michael.
Oh,
Good podcasting. Right, Michael has places to be. If you haven't had enough of us this week, ladies and gentlemen, tune in on Tuesday where you can listen to our other podcast. Sure, look. Sure, listen. The podcast that takes a pop at culture. It's linked down below in the description. Bye.
We're doing an exhumed episode, Benjamin, on The Witches of Eastwick.
We are very, very sexy share. Bye-bye.